There are moments in history that feel like a fever dream. Moments where the rules of civilization seem to just dissolve. Where neighbor turns on neighbor and the streets of a great city run red with blood. We often think these moments are distant, a product of a barbaric past. But the stories, if we listen closely, feel eerily familiar. They serve as a warning. And one of the most chilling warnings comes from Paris, in the summer of 1572. It all started with a wedding, a symbol of peace. Margaret of Valois, the king's sister, a Catholic princess, was to marry Henry of Navarre, the young leader of France's Protestant minority, the Huguenots. For the first time in decades, the great Huguenot nobles, soldiers, and leaders felt safe enough to enter the city of Paris, a Catholic stronghold. Imagine the scene. August 18, 1572. The air is thick with the heat of summer and with a tense, fragile hope. Thousands of Protestants have flocked to the capital, their formal clothing a stark contrast to the familiar robes of the Catholic Parisians. They are celebrating a union they pray will finally end the brutal civil wars that have torn France apart for years. But beneath the celebrations, the tension is a low hum you can feel in the cobblestones. The city's people are suspicious. They see the Huguenots not as countrymen, but as heretics. And in the shadows of the royal palace, a different kind of union is being forged, one of fear and conspiracy. To understand what happened next, you need to understand the people in charge. At the center of it all was Catherine de Medici, the Queen Mother, a brilliant, ruthless political operator who had fought for decades to keep her sons on the throne and her country from tearing itself apart. Her son, King Charles IX, was young, impressionable, and weak-willed. He was easily swayed, and the man swaying him most was the Admiral Gaspard de Coligny. Coligny was the most respected leader of the Huguenots, a powerful military mind and a man of great influence. He had become a father figure to the young king, and this terrified Catherine. She saw her own influence over her son slipping away, and with it, her control over France. Coligny was pushing the king toward a war with Catholic Spain, a move Catherine felt would be disastrous. He had to be dealt with. On August 22nd, just 4 days after the wedding, the fragile peace was shattered. As Admiral Coligny walked back to his lodgings from a meeting at the Louvre, a shot rang out from an upstairs window. An assassin's bullet tore through his arm and hand. He survived, but the message was clear. The attempt on his life was an act of war. Immediately, the Huguenot nobles were in an uproar. They stormed into the palace, demanding justice from the king. They knew who was behind this. The Guise family, leaders of the ultra-Catholic faction, and almost certainly the Queen Mother herself, Catherine de Medici. The Huguenots swore that if the king did not give them justice, they would take it themselves. Paris, once a city of hope, was now a powder keg. The Protestants were furious and talking of revenge. The Catholics were fearful and talking of a Protestant uprising. The air grew thick with paranoia. This is the moment the warning truly takes shape. It's in the panicked, secret meetings that follow. In a dark room in the Louvre Palace, Catherine de Medici meets with a small council of her closest Catholic advisors. They paint a terrifying picture for the young King Charles. They tell him the Huguenots are plotting to kill him and the entire royal family. That an army is ready to rise up and seize control. There is no proof of this. It is fear weaponized. The young king, overwrought, terrified, and emotionally unstable, resists at first. But Catherine presses him. Is it not better, she might have argued, to cut off the head of the snake before it strikes? She convinces him that a swift, surgical strike against the Huguenot leaders, the very men in Paris for the wedding, is the only way to save the kingdom, the only way to save himself. In a fit of panicked rage, the story goes, King Charles finally broke. "Kill them," he screamed. "Kill them all, so that not one is left to reproach me." With those words, the fate of thousands was sealed. It was no longer about preventing a war. It was about starting a massacre. The signal was to be the bell of the Church of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois, across from the Louvre. Sometime before dawn on August 24th, St. Bartholomew's Day, the bell began to toll. It was soon answered by church bells across the city, a sound that normally called people to prayer now calling them to murder. Royal guards, led by the Duke of Guise, stormed Admiral Coligny's lodgings. They killed him and threw his body from the window to the street below. This was the first death, the signal for the slaughter to begin. What started as a targeted assassination of a few dozen Huguenot leaders quickly spiraled into a citywide frenzy. Militias were called out. Ordinary Catholic citizens, whipped into a state of religious and political fury by preachers and pamphlets, formed mobs. They went door to door, pulling Protestant families from their homes. Neighbor turned on neighbor. Men, women, children, no one was spared. The river Seine, it was said, became so clogged with bodies that the water ran red for weeks. This wasn't war. This was something different. This was the complete breakdown of a society. The trust between people, the very idea of a shared community, was dissolving in real time on the streets of Paris. The killing went on for 3 days in the city. The news and the violence spread like a virus. As messengers carried word of the events in Paris to other French cities, massacres of Huguenots erupted across the country. In Rouen, in Lyon, in Bordeaux. For weeks, the killing continued. The total number of dead is still debated by historians, but it's estimated to be somewhere between 5,000 and 30,000 people. The world reacted in 2 ways. Protestant countries, like England, were filled with horror and outrage. It confirmed their worst fears about the brutality of the Catholic powers. But in Madrid and in Rome, there were celebrations. The Pope ordered a hymn of thanksgiving to be sung and a medal struck to commemorate the event. To them, the massacre was a victory over heresy, a divine judgment. This schism in reaction only deepened the divides that would continue to plague Europe for another century. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre wasn't just a bloody chapter in French history. It is a timeless and deeply human story. It's a warning, written in blood, about what can happen when we allow our differences to become weapons. It shows how quickly fear and paranoia, especially when stoked by leaders for political gain, can overwhelm reason and compassion. It shows how ordinary people can be convinced to commit extraordinary acts of violence against their neighbors simply because they pray differently or hold different beliefs. The world of 1572 is long gone, but the forces that drove it, religious intolerance, political division, the spread of misinformation, and the use of fear as a tool of power, are not. The story of St. Bartholomew's Day asks us a question that echoes through the centuries. How strong are the foundations of our own peace? And what does it take for them, too, to crack? It's a warning that reminds us that civilization is a fragile thing, and it depends on the choices we make every single day to see the humanity in each other.